Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 62 of Estate Planning TV. I'm your host, Christopher Small. I'm the owner of CMS Law Firm. We do estate planning, we do probate, and that's all we do. And this is the internet's most passionate show about estate planning. I'm super excited to be here with you. I'm not all dressed up in my suit like I normally am because it's a Saturday. Snowmageddon. Not to sort of like set this video in time, but Snowmageddon has sort of messed everything up. I've been watching kids for the last couple weeks and just haven't had time to do this. And which, by the way, reminds me at the beginning, I always want to say this. If you want to sort of save time, save money probably, save resources, save your sanity, and you want to just talk about estate planning straight away, and you want to talk about it with me, I would be happy to do that. The easiest way to do that is to call me, 206-659-1512, or you can go to cmslawfirm.com/strategy session. Okay, it's a free call or free meeting, and just we'll talk about you, your family, what you've got going on, what you want to do, and I'll give you some options, and you can decide what you want to do. So feel free to do that. But today, I want to talk about something that I actually talk about a lot in these strategy sessions. I talk about these things a lot with clients, and that is sort of 5 trust distribution considerations. So 5 things that you want to think about when you are thinking about how to distribute your trust once you're gone. All right, so to give you sort of, to step all the way back to the beginning, remind you what a trust is. A trust, the trust that we're talking about is a revocable living trust, okay? And the way that it works is you create this trust. It's basically like a box, all right? And while you are alive, you can put anything in the box that you want. You can take anything out of the box. You are in charge of the box. You are everything. Everything with the box is all you. That's it. And the other thing is that when you create this box, you also get to create the rules for how everything in the box is treated when you are gone. Presumably, and usually, this is for how the money is distributed to your children once you're gone. And there are a bunch of different things to think about when you do that, and there are a bunch of different ways to do it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start sort of at the very beginning of how to do this. The sort of standard trust distribution schedule is a discretionary distribution. And those discretionary distributions are done by the trustee, who is the person that you appoint to step into the role of manager of the trust once you are gone, okay? At that point, they are going to make decisions and make distributions based on support, health, maintenance, education. Okay, so those are typically the 4 categories that the trustee is directed to make distributions on. So the example I always use is, let's say your kid is going to college, right? Obviously, the trustee is going to cut a check and pay for school because that clearly falls under education. Now, let's say they're going to a school where they need a car, they need transportation. They may talk to the trustee and say, hey, I'm going to, I don't know, Harvard, okay? Stanford, University of Kansas, okay? That's where I'm from. I'm going to the University of Kansas, and I need a car to get around. And I would like to have a Ferrari. The trustee would say, well, I agree with you that you need a car, but you're not getting a Ferrari. We're gonna get you a Jeep, and it's gonna be amazing. Okay, so that's how the discretionary distributions work for when it comes to trust distributions generally. But you can set different distribution schedules based on really anything that you want, and you can set them more stringent or less stringent depending on what's important to you. Some people will scatter them over ages. So like at 25, you get a third outright. At 30, you get a third outright. At 35, you get a third outright. Okay. Now, the way that you're going to do these distributions for your own family is going to depend on some of these things that we're going to talk about today. Some of these considerations that we're going to talk about right now. So, the first consideration to make typically is going to be age. All right. If you have children or beneficiaries that are going to be under the age of 18. You're typically going to want to do a couple things. You're going to want to have those discretionary distributions in place, and I often counsel or suggest that people strongly consider having distributions that go out over time. All right, when people are young, even if they're good people, they typically don't have the life skills and the life experiences that they need to make good decisions with money. And having somebody there to help them do that is always sort of a beneficial kind of a thing, right? So age is always a factor. The other thing too is if you create this trust when your kids are young, and as they get older, you see that they are responsible, or that you do want to have them sort of given the money in a different way, you can always update your trust. You can always amend it at any time. That's the beauty of the revocable living trust. Okay, you can fix it up anytime you want, any way you want. Okay, the second consideration is how much control do you want the beneficiaries to have? If you want them to have no control, if you want it to be 100% discretionary at the decision of the trustee, then you can do that. If you want them to have complete control, where they basically just have to ask their trustee for money and the trustee is directed to give it to them no matter what, you can do that too, and you can have everything in between. Obviously, the less control a beneficiary has over their assets, over their share of the trust, the safer it is from things like divorce, bankruptcy, bad habits, right? It would be drugs, gambling, excessive spending, bad friends, these kinds of things. And the more preserved it's going to be potentially for generations down the line. Okay, so that's consideration number 2. Number 3, consideration number 3 for your beneficiaries is, do they have any special needs? If they do, then you are definitely going to want to work into the trust some language that actually creates a special type of revocable trust or a special type of trust for the kid, and it's going to be a special needs trust. What this trust does is it directs the trustee to make sure that they don't make any distributions that are going to affect eligibility for any governmental programs that this disabled person might be eligible for as a result of their disability. In some cases, an inheritance to someone that is disabled or that can utilize government benefits, that inheritance is counted as part of their income, and it can really mess up their eligibility for programs that they may need, that may be helpful for them, all kinds of stuff like that. Okay. Number 4, the fourth consideration for trust distribution is, are you interested in legacy? If you are, then you may want to exercise more control. You may want to have you want to have more discretion for the other trustee to ensure that the money survives, is used really to promote opportunities for each generation, and survives for multiple generations. Another thing to consider too is if you have a very large estate, talking about over $8, $5, $6, $7 million, there's a very strong potential that money, if it's treated correctly, can grow and really help multiple generations, probably at least great grandkids, depending on how many kids everybody has. Because as more kids come, each generation is bigger typically. Because if you have 2 kids and then they have 2 kids, now we have 4, and if they have 2 kids, now we have 8, right? Just more money to spread out to everybody. But if that's important to you, then you can structure your trust to sort of promote that over time and set up the distribution schedule so that the money's not squandered or not given away or not used in a way that's not sort of beneficial for the current beneficiary and then those other people down the line. Okay? Number 5, can your beneficiaries make good decisions on their own? A perfect example of this would be if you have a large IRA, you may want to include in your trust provisions that require the trustee to stretch the IRA out over time. And when you have an IRA, you have 3 typical distribution options. You can take it all at once. If the person does that, if your beneficiary does that, they're going to pay income tax as if they received that all at once. If you recall, IRAs, 401ks, it's pre-tax money that goes in. So as the money comes out, income tax is paid on it. Well, if you take $1 million out at one time, you're going to be in the top tax bracket. You're going to pay the highest tax rate. You're going to suck up as much of that money as you can is going to go to the government, basically, which most people don't want. The second option is to take distribution over 5 years. Typically, you will have that same problem, particularly if you have a big IRA. The other thing that you can do is you can stretch it. It's called stretch off of the beneficiary's age. So, for example, if my mom left me a big IRA, sorry, my computer went to sleep. We don't want that. If if my mom left me a big IRA, right? I'm 38 years old right now. I could stretch that off. Let's say my actuarial table told me that my last distribution is supposed to be at 88. I can stretch that IRA out over 50 years. So in year one, I'm only taking 1/50th, which means that has a tremendous opportunity to grow, and it has a tremendous opportunity to actually act like a true retirement fund, even for me, which is pretty cool, pretty special. So if you don't trust your kids to make the right decisions on that, you can make it for them. You can tell the trustee to stretch it, which is, I would highly recommend that you consider that. Okay, I never tell people what to do, but I would highly recommend that you consider that. All right, that's it. So those are my 5. But because I'm a giver, I want to come up with the 6th provision. And the 6th thing to think about is if you have a blended family. And I talked about this a couple of episodes ago. So if you really want to see what that sounds like in depth, then just go back. I think it's episode 59 or 60. But if you have a blended family, then there are some really specific things that you want to consider when it comes to trust distribution, because you really have they're not competing factors, but you have 2 specific significant factors that you're considering. A, taking care of the surviving spouse, and B, making sure that the deceased spouse's kids are taken care of when the surviving spouse is gone. Okay, so if you think about it, let's say I was divorced and then remarried, and that person brought kids in. So now I have kids from my previous marriage. She has kids from her previous marriage. If I die first, I want to make sure that my new spouse is taken care of, but I also want to make sure that my biological kids are taken care of, and that not all the money goes to my new wife and then she gives it to all of her kids, for example, or spends it all down or does something else with it, and my kids just don't see any of it. Does that make sense? So that's the blended family sort of, it's not a conundrum, but it's just the thing to think about. Okay, that's it. So if any of this sounded interesting to you, if you don't have any of this and you think you need it, well, there's an easy solution, right? Reach out to me, set up a phone call or set up a meeting. I do free strategy sessions. You can call me 206-659-1512 just so you want to set up a strategy session. You can also go to cmslawfirm.com/strategy session, and it'll get you there. All right, so that's it for today's episode of Estate Planning TV. Once again, I'm Christopher Small with CMS Law Firm. I really hope you enjoyed this. I love talking about this stuff. I love teaching. I love helping, and I hope this helped you. And I'll catch you again for the next episode. See ya.